setting the standard every day of the week. The Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper.
Kili Willis Otieno, who is an advocate of the High Court, as well as the Deputy Party Leader of the Safina Party, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, Wakili.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, despite the circumstances.
Despite the circumstances, I know it's quite something. Even as we get into this conversation this morning, we're asking questions around, where are we going? And in order to ask where we are going, we have to then ask where we've come from and where are we now? These are definitely questions that we need to ask. And before we get into this, because I want to talk about a couple of things that you actually said yesterday, but before we get into it, Dennis is going to welcome you with today's proverb. It's from Ethiopia, and we want to hear what you think about that.
Ethiopia, a country that has never been colonized, really fought the Italians, as well as a country that Kenya continues to fight with every day in terms of who's breaking world records, the long distance running and whatnot. And also in coffee business, Kenyans say our coffee is best. Ethiopians say we are the home of coffee. Which one do you like best, Kenyan coffee or Ethiopian?
Of course, Kenyan coffee.
Kenyan coffee.
Yes. Ethiopians are imitators. Yes.
All right. Our proverb today: he who conceals his disease cannot expect to be cured.
Of course, it requires of us to attend to whatever issue that is ailing you. If you don't speak about it, then there can be no solution. Just like now in Kenya today. We have a big problem that the legacy politicians think they can conceal. It cannot. That is why you are seeing the uprising of our young people. You must be able to address, come true, and accept your reality. When you are sick, you are sick. You will not find a solution if you don't accept it.
There you go. Yesterday was an interesting day. It was the 25th of June, and it commemorated a year since we saw the pivotal shifting anti-finance bill protests that took place and then morphed into quite a number of things, where there was a demand on accountability for better governance, for better leadership, to do things better. And so yesterday, we woke up to barricaded parliament, and we woke up to closed roads, and we woke up to a stopping of many things. And through the day, you said a number of things, Wakili. Amongst the first things that you said, a government that turns its guns, tear gas, and cruelty on its own people, especially children, is not just illegitimate, it's a disgrace. No regime that wages war against the future can claim to have one. When you shoot at students, brutalize teens, and criminalize dissent, you're looting the soul of the nation. Kenya belongs to the people, not to a club of power-drunk elites hiding behind uniforms and broken promises. You went on to say, when a regime needs tear gas, guns, water cannons, and barbed wire to govern, it's no longer leading but clinging to power. The hallmark of tyranny is fear dressed in uniform. What a legacy indeed. This regime fears accountability. It fears the image of children running from tear gas more than the violence itself. You directed this at the president, and you said, if your leadership can't withstand live cameras, it has no legitimacy. Gagging the press won't stop the truth. It'll only expose your fear. And the last one I'll share, at least for now, you said, this regime is waging war against transparency because it has something to hide. These are a number of things that you said yesterday in light of the things that were happening. What guided that?
And it tells you, look at it. First thing you wake up in the morning. And in the news, what you first see is the CS Interior inspecting barricade of parliament, setting up barbed wire everywhere. And they say the nation is secure. Sometimes you ask yourself when you wake up in the morning, which I do, what is the value add that I'm going to make in people's lives today? So when you go to barricade parliament with barbed wires, are you adding value to people's lives? When you go and inspect policemen that you've deployed and you've given them guns to do what? When Kenyans are at war, you've given a policeman a gun and a bullet. When the only news that information had been told, Kenyans are going to demonstrate peaceably and unarmed under Article 37. And your response is to give police guns and bullets. Then you go out early in the morning to inspect. What is the expectation? So it means for you, as you woke up in the morning, your expectation was to cause death. If you had told me that you had organized policemen in reflector jackets as to act as marshals to guide the demonstrators, I would say, yes, you're adding value to their right to demonstrate. But you give them guns, what do you expect? So you are a killer squad. And your conduct throughout the day, you start ignoring court orders. The issue of now switching off media platforms. I mean, we've been here before. It's been litigated, and we have a court order. Article 34 of our Constitution is very explicit. It is one of the very few, I think the only one, that has a negative connotation on the state. It prohibits the state shall not interfere with the content of any broadcast media. Then the CA wakes up in the morning and they declare, we are stopping live coverage. What are you hiding? It should be free. Transparent, let everybody witness what is going on. If the protesters are committing criminal acts, let everybody witness it. Let witness the arrest. If the police are using live bullets in the demonstrations, let everybody witness it. Let it be documented. Let every Kenyan see the truth. But that person who hides wants to operate in the dark. It tells you that they have a criminal mind. What informs their engagement with the public is a criminal mind. And the intention is to commit acts of criminality. And that is what we are witnessing today. Almost 12 Kenyans dead just for exercising their right to peaceably and armed to protest. And they are not dead in the hands of civilians. We must always remember this. They are dead, and their death is caused by police bullets.
Let's look
And
at some
look
of these
at even
numbers.
some of those shots.
Yeah.
Majority of them are to the head.
So there was an intent to kill.
It's an intention to kill. If you told me someone was shot, for example, in the leg, which you should not even do it anyway, that's not a shot to maim. That's a shot that is aimed to kill. The police who are shooting were shooting to kill. That is why most of those gunshots we are witnessing is the chest or the head.
Let's look at some of those numbers, shall we? According to what's being reported across board, at least 9 people, in some cases reported as 11, reported deaths, 2 in Matu, 2 in Imali, 1 in Ongata Rongai, 1 in Embakasi, 1 in Juja, 1 in Kikuyu, 1 in Molo, 1 in Olkalau, 1 in Ngara, bringing that total to 11. Over 400 people have been injured. And I mean, we saw devastating pictures yesterday. Of course, one woman who was shot in the face. I mean, she's in recovery. But then we also saw 61 people having been arrested through the day yesterday. What picture does this actually paint? I mean, I'm looking at the picture on the Standard this morning, and we look at that picture, and if we look at it like this, it's one picture, but it's many pictures made up in the middle there. And so one must ask the question, what kind of picture are we painting here? If there are peaceful protests which were meant to commemorate what happened the year before, why do we see it met with such force? And does it tell a different picture?
I mean, the truth of the matter is that the legacy politicians are uncomfortable with this. Because when Kenyans are coming out in these numbers that you're witnessing, Kenyans are not coming out organized or mobilized by any legacy politician. They are not championing a political party cause. They are championing the people's issue. It is now about us. It's not about legacy politicians. That we are saying we are demonstrating because of this political party. We are demanding for accountability for the benefit of all Kenyans. This makes legacy politicians uncomfortable because these are new terrain. Normally they are used to dividing Kenyans along tribal lines. So Kabila hii na Kabila hii. Then you say, we are going to pit tribes against each other, we go to elections. This one now is different. This one now is about accountability. This is about good governance. This is about making the country to make sense to everybody. It's about the economy. Why do we have a situation where many of our qualified young people don't have jobs? Those who even had jobs are losing them. And yet the cost of living is increasing. It's a state of hopelessness. So this regime, and the Standard actually has captured it very well. This is a rogue regime. We are now dealing with a criminal state. They cannot claim to be our leaders because leadership is supposed to be a subtotal of the people. And if the people are now out here, united in one accord to fight for good governance, then the opposition can only mean they are not a summation of who we are.
Well, Kelly, you've talked about a rogue regime. You're talking about the opposition. On page 14 of the Standard, there's a story about MPs scattering for safety amid fear of a second visit by the Gen Zs.
Yes.
I'm just receiving pictures on my phone this morning. The CBD is coming to normal, but still that razor wire we saw yesterday is still around Parliament, day 2. So they're here to clear that whole space. And yesterday, they had a morning session which ordinarily was adjourned because of what was happening. It was supposed to be adjourned at 1 p.m., ended at 11:45, an hour and 15 minutes before time. And the presiding speaker was forced to defer the motions and bills to another sitting because of what was happening. And how they left Parliament, they immediately rose, and in the long convoys of parliamentary staff and MPs, they could be seen sneaking out of the premises through the 150 million tunnel.
As it should tell you their thinking. In fact, they deserved what will have gotten to them. They deserve in the following way. When they sit there, and I ask this question, every day I ask myself this question, today I've woken up, am I adding value? So even those members of parliament should ask themselves, when they woke up in the morning and they went to the house, are they adding value to the lives of the people of Kenya? If they are not, look, given at their 150 million tunnel, they create a safe passage for themselves.
Yeah.
You want to tell me they cannot walk over the road just like any other Kenyans?
I mean, we've seen in the years past, legislators leave Parliament, interact with people, even protesters, walk through Arambe Avenue, and it was okay. But today, besides talking about the government, we're also looking at Parliament, and it's a completely different picture where they don't want to mingle with the people who voted them in.
And yet, they are sustained in those offices using the people's money. It is the taxpayers. That poor old woman that you see selling vegetables in the market is the one funding that lavish lifestyle. So, in my view, this is a criminal enterprise. They've now assumed positions of leadership, and now they think they are our lords. They are not. They are supposed to be servants of the people. In fact, in the ideal, what we should be discussing even before we go any further in this country is how do we make the emoluments of these people to be commensurate with the earnings of other Kenyans?
Yes.
Why should we have somebody earning 1.5 million shillings as a member of parliament, and yet the person he represents, a teacher, is paid 17,000 shillings, a JSS teacher? And you think that is an equal society? It cannot be. So it is this differential treatment that sets aside some citizens to appear as more superior than the rest.
Yeah,
That is what makes them turn tone deaf when they pass whatever they pass in parliament. They pass bills that you ask yourself, are they living in the same country as we are living? You will think that they are shielded from what other Kenyans are going through. So they can create their own country and leave Kenyans to decide how they can govern themselves in a way that responds to the common good, that responds to the desires of the people of Kenya. But what we have here is not sustainable.
Okay, Wakili, now here we talk about, let's talk about the law. There is a court order that was given on how police are supposed to operate whenever they're handling a protest. That includes them not wearing masks, being in uniforms. But yesterday, again, we saw police defying court orders, some being in civilian outfits, still in their masks. You go to the CA directive, then again, there is another court order that is being disrespected. And you put that together with what even the leaders are saying in terms of the protest yesterday in Mombasa. And they're saying these protests are making the country not move forward. They need to stop. Yet the Constitution guarantees Kenyans to go out there and protest. In terms of just the respect and the rule of law, seems as though those with the responsibility of ensuring that this is upheld are the ones breaking it. Which way, Kenya?
In fact, our legacy politicians are notorious for not following the law. Because as it is, let's start with the media blackout, the shutting down of the media live broadcasts. As it is, the Constitution already tells you you cannot interfere with the content of any broadcast media. That's the law. They ignore it. Anyway, the matter has gone to court before, previously when they did it, and the court has told them, you cannot do it. So we now have a court order. Not just the Constitution. We assume they didn't know how to read the Constitution. The court has read it for them and told them, you cannot do it. Then, out of the blues, Mugonyi and his characters just appears and issues a directive, shut down. Before you know it, they send vehicles and policemen to go and forcefully shut down those transmission centers. Why?
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, if it's a question of the rule of law, this law that legacy politicians are talking about, even the ones who are in Mombasa, why is it that it's only rule of law when it applies to them?
Yes.
Why not them applying that rule of law? Because they only use rule of law arguments when it suits their purposes, not when it suits the constitution. Because they should start leading by examples. The policemen going out there wearing balaclavas, some in civilian, no identifying marks, and they have guns, some are carrying pistols. You can't tell me that somebody carrying a pistol when people are demonstrating has an intention of controlling demonstrators. No, that's a killer. Any policeman carrying a pistol in a demonstration, we must call him for who he is. He's a killer. A pistol is not a firearm that you are saying you're intending to use to control a crowd. No. A pistol is a close contact weapon. You want to use it to disseminate, to kill someone. So those are killers, those are not policemen. And yet there's a court order telling them you cannot be in civilian.
Okay, so here we are. And if you notice that I started with pictures and images, and that's the start of the question, because we've used the events of the last few weeks, and that has been the brush that has painted a picture of the nation at the moment. And the picture of a nation is what the most vulnerable at that time are actually going through. So if the people are saying that the governance with which we are being led at the moment is wanting, if you don't then, if you're not able to live out what the Constitution guarantees that you can, if you cannot walk out peaceably, for fear of being shot, which in this case is not just a fear, but it's a reality, that people will die, why are we still having these conversations? And I actually agree with the comment that I've seen here, and I'm asking myself the same question. That what are we still talking about?
We should not. In fact, where we are today, the legacy politicians should have left office and allowed the people of Kenya to choose their leadership. Because when you are in public office, it's a public trust. In this particular instance, the trustees have gone rogue. They are not acting in accordance with the public trust that they were bestowed upon. They are not acting in accordance with the Constitution. There's a big disconnect between the people and those legacy politicians. But they insist. They want to superimpose themselves on the people of Kenya. Because if you ask me, even let's say we're talking solutions, what should we be looking at today? We should be looking at William Ruto and his cohorts going back to the drawing board and asking, when did the rain start beating us? Why this big disconnect between us and the people? And the answer is very simple. Go to the Constitution, use as a measure of your conduct in the past even 2 months. Are we living in accordance with our Constitution? And just reclaim the space. Start doing your acts in accordance with what the Constitution provides. When you talk about people saying we are going for remembrance on that day, who says legacy politicians are exempt from remembrance? Yeah. Why did they have to go to Kilifi? Who said they couldn't even also say, okay, fine, as a nation, we are declaring a day of national remembrance. We are all congregating at Holy Family. We pray for our lost souls. And more importantly, the next step is to make sure it never happens again. We call for accountability for those who killed them, the policemen who used firearms to kill these our lost souls. Then third, we can talk compensation of to their families.
Well, the Interior CS, just the other day, State House, when they had the Kenya Police FC, he said that they're having conversations and they want to engage the families of the ones who've lost their loved ones. And he also, by extension, said that the issue shouldn't be politicized and politicians should step aside and allow them to have direct contact with the families so that they can now have discussions on compensation.
Dennis,
yes,
I've been in this country since 2007. And I witnessed the post-election violence. I've been in court with victims of post-election violence, the ones who suffered sexual assault. sexual violence. Some of them were forcefully circumcised. Women who were raped. We went to court in 2013, got our judgment in 2020. To date, the victims in petition 122 of 2013 have not been compensated to date. And they have a court order. These are people who are sexually violated. Some forcefully circumcised using blunt objects, broken bottles. They've not been compensated today. I was here in 2017 during the Mandamano after the Supreme Court, the election of 2017. I was Raila's campaign manager. There were victims, including Baby Pendo. I'm in court today challenging and demanding for the prosecution of the police commanders in Kisumu who are responsible for the deaths of 69 people. I was here when Azimio was doing the Aman Sufuria demonstrations. Almost 60 people again plus were killed. I was here last year when over 82 Kenyans were killed. I've been here for the last 1 year. Not a single conversation to discuss compensation. So when you hear legacy politicians like Morecambe and talk the way they're talking, they're gaslighting you. Because nothing stops them. Nothing stops them today from saying, even those who you say you are negotiating, those who have court orders, let's obey them. Let's compensate them. Then, nothing also stops you, because you have the database of all these people, victims, from saying, okay, this is the structured conversation we're having. This is what we are proposing as government to pay as compensation. You even pay before you start the conversation. The sign of goodwill. Yeah, you can say, as a sign of goodwill, we are giving out this much as we initiate the conversation. So that people can say that, indeed, for once, there is a genuine attempt to address our violations. But there's none.
So if it is so clear that there's a total disregard to obeying court orders by this government, as a lawyer, because you've talked about all these victims from all those years up to now, the other day when Munkomen was speaking about compensation to last year's victims, what should happen next?
You know, what I say, and I like it that the Kenyan people are now claiming their space. And because William Ruto by is done, for your information. Him and the Kenyan people is done. My only invitation to the Kenyan people is that when we will next be choosing the leadership, we must have a people's charter with them. That there are some things that we will call the reducible minimums that administration, the people's administration, must attend to. And for me, number one on the people's charter will be the question of accountability and compensation. Because we are here where we are because of previous acts of legacy politicians to ignore.
But Wakili, on that charter conversation, I have a problem with it.
Yes.
And my problem is, when the Kenya Kwanza government was coming into power, there was a conversation around them going around all counties. They did town hall meetings.
Yes.
They were signing off charters in their manifestos and all that. By the time they were coming up with now the final document, they were saying, we have listened to you, we've heard you, Kenya, this is our plan. And they actually called it the plan. And the bottom-up plan. And the people had these hopes and aspirations. They took over power, they said they found there was no money.
What you should pay attention to. Those are legacy politicians. And that's why I always use this term, legacy politicians, intentionally.
But if we have another
that's why I'm saying, why should we elect legacy politicians?
But no, okay.
In this coming conversation, if you ask me, we should not be discussing legacy politicians. People who have been in our public space, political space, for the last 30 years, their lives have been underwritten by the people of Kenya for the last 30 years. There are Kenyans here who have never paid even a coin for petrol. Those are the legacy politicians. What I'm saying,
yes,
don't use the parameters of legacy politicians to discuss the new Kenya that you want to come to birth. This new Kenya will be a Kenya about. Don't go to look for legacy politicians to sign a charter with, because you know what they're about. They're about lies, deceit. Choose amongst yourselves, Kenyans. Because we are many, we are 50 million. They're only less than 2,000. Choose amongst your 50 million and sign a charter amongst yourselves. And we believe within that 50 million, there'll be people who are committed to champion the cause of the people.
My issue, what are the guarantees?
What are the
even
guarantees?
this new person, this new face,
The
will obey
guarantee I'm
people's
telling
charter?
you is number one, is don't choose from the legacy politicians. Because their politics is informed by deceit.
Because then there would be no guarantee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's no guarantee with the legacy politician. That's all they know. Their DNA is about deceit. That's who they are. You can't run away from it. Then number two, as you asked me, the people must maintain what I call eternal vigilance. Eternal vigilance, that within the first 2 months or even the first month of an administration, if you see even any change in a comma in the charter,
Get them out.
get them out. We don't have to wait. Power is in the hands of the people.
Okay, I want to take a break and come back, and because we say it all the time, and it sounds really great to hear that power actually is in the hands of the people. How do we exercise then, or manifest, or practice that power? Advocate Wakili Willis is with us in the studio today, coming out of a very dark day. Let's not forget that people died yesterday, and that people are fighting for their lives in hospital right now. Some people haven't had the privilege of then being able to be taken to hospital, and some folks are actually fighting or nursing their wounds at home or in some kind of shelter. And this is all against the backdrop of what governance would look like, or what it needs to be for Kenya. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll continue when we come back from this break and into this conversation. Our live streams on YouTube, Facebook, and on X. And this is our audience on KTN.
Dial star 811 star 802 hash to get this as your skiza tune. KTN, ndio home.
I don't accept that.
Get ready for an unforgettable experience. At KTN, we've got it all. Hold tight, because the adrenaline rush is real. Our action-packed films will have you gripping your seat. Craving suspense? Hungry for adventure? Or just looking for that perfect escape? Whatever your mood, KTN is your ultimate destination for a movie experience.
Lazima wai, tuna finish kumalo. Round this tuna finish kumalo. Lazima wai, tuna finish kumalo. Kubash to life tuna malo. Wai, tuna finish kumalo. Ay, kwa Yesu kuna bamba. Nilimdigi kwa shuni kwetu kubamba.
Ulimaliza tishu ya choo? Hapa mtu akimaliza tishu anawekanga ingine.
Sina doketi.
Unataka how much?
50,000. Unataka hiyo yote?
Haididi. Mnanipeleka madhara ndio mali yangu mkule vile mnataka. Hakuna mnadanganya ati this for my own good.
Ndiwe ulimaliza maji kwa fridge? Ukarudisha kibuyu bila maji?
Serious. Unanipigia hizo madrama nikiwa job?
We, amtalipa gari.
Unataka kulipa?
Unafaa nikuitie polisi wewe. Nonsense. Toka hapa.
Your health, your questions, our mission.
So what do you look out for?
Health Digest, your trusted guide to living better, longer and healthier is back. And it is bigger and better.
We're just gonna carry on with the treatment.
From cutting-edge medical breakthroughs to everyday wellness tips, we uncover the facts, bust myths, and bring you expert insights that matter.
Our target for tuberculosis is to make treatment much easier.
Whether it's fitness, nutrition, mental health, or medical advancements, we break it down in a way that's easy to understand and act on. Stay informed, stay empowered. Don't miss Health Digest with Gloria Milemo every Saturday at 9 p.m. only on KTN, where your health is our top priority.
I make Monday count by reading Health and Science. It helps me eat healthy, live healthy, and stay healthy.
Setting the standard every day of the week. The Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper.
Very loud, and that's what paints the picture for this umbrella under which we are currently. And then we move to the point where we say that something needs to be done about this, that it cannot be the case where Kenyans have to die, whereby things have to be destroyed, whereby the fear is essentially what you smell when you wake up every day. It cannot be in a space whereby we are saying it is progressive and that there's leadership in place and that there's good governance. But then when we were going on the break, you said, you know what? The power belongs to the people to change. That's okay. And I think about my possessions and I think about my belongings. They are mine. And then I can do with them then as I wish. But then also that doesn't preclude somebody from then coming to take that thing from me that belongs to me. But what I do with it then is very important. So we say it all the time that the power belongs to the people, but are we actually using that thing that belongs to us for what we want to see? And how do we actually do that? Because essentially what you're saying is that the exercise of voting is how you use that power, no?
You know, power belongs to the people. And our Constitution Article 1 is very clear. It's all sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised in accordance with the Constitution, either directly or indirectly. What you witness today on the streets are Kenyans exercising their direct sovereignty, allowed, permissible in the Constitution. Then there's the second limb of through democratically elected representatives. As it is, the ones who are last elected, they've lost the public trust. They've lost the legitimacy to continue governing because they are not leading in accordance with the social contract as captured in the Constitution. That is why the people are out on the streets, exercising their sovereignty directly and demanding for better. And for me, if you ask me, there's even nothing wrong if the people at some point says, no, you have to get out even before you finish your term. That is permissible in our Constitution. And even if it gets to election time, that's why I'm saying the Kenyan people must, in choosing a new leadership, be very clear that you even create what I call a spiritual document, the People's Charter. It's a bond that we don't even have to write it down, this People's Charter. It must be an understanding. It is so obvious, just like somebody says, it's obvious that a man or a woman will fall asleep at some point during the day. Within that 48-hour cycle, you will fall asleep. It is so obvious, or you'll eat something to stay alive. This should be something that a commitment that even to think of breaking it becomes impossible. A leadership that is elected based on a social consciousness of why they are elected.
These ones, I'm sorry, Wakili. Does that consciousness exist?
It exists. If it didn't exist,
where does it exist? Because this is a thing that we often talk about other jurisdictions, right? And we use it as examples all the time. And we say, I mean, what's the one famous one that we had a couple of years ago? That there was that was a train crash, Greece, along those lines. Even before questions were asked, what happened? Who was involved? Did somebody not do their job? Even before there was any kind of investigation or interrogation, the Minister for Transport did what?
He resigned.
He resigned. He said, you know what? Before anybody can even ask any question, I bear the ultimate responsibility here. And before anybody can ask a question, I'm going to step back so that we can actually see what happened. And then I can also that consciousness was very clear and it's very poignant. And we could see that this thing actually exists. That's not something you buy. That's not something that you sit in a class and somebody teaches you. It is innate.
Yes.
So it seems as though we are saying here that there's a shop somewhere that you can go and buy this.
I'm not saying that. I'm simply telling you, legacy politicians don't have it. Yeah, you know who doesn't have it. But the people who I see on the streets, the Kenyans that I see every day, coming together, not united by tribe, but united by a demand for a better country. They have that consciousness. It is only that our politics, for the longest time, almost 60 years, has been informed by legacy politicians. Who to whom, what is their consciousness? It is self-aggrandizement. It is not about the people, but about themselves. So, in this political moment, all I'm saying is that the people, when they will get to that point of donating their sovereignty back, they should not donate it to legacy politicians. They should donate it to those within themselves who share a similar consciousness. Those are the ones that can live true to what we are talking about.
Wakili, these legacy politicians you keep referring to, and then I'll hand it over to Settle. The composition of these legacy politicians, there was a time, there was a clamor to have new leadership, youthful leadership in this country. And the aspirations around that moved people then to vote in blocks to get in, for example, in parliament, very young politicians in parliament, in government spaces. Yet, years later, we look back, and I keep repeating this time and time again, the quality of conversations and debates even in parliament among the youthful ones that people had hopes on, the ones now who sit in government, look at the composition, average age of 50 and below. There's such a disappointment. What then guarantees that with these new faces we see on the streets, unajua, there's something Kagwe said once when he was appointed to be the CS health docket during COVID. He said when he entered there, he was willing to work, but he was fighting cartels and he was fighting these forces. What guarantees these new faces that will take over from legacy politicians that they will not be swallowed up by these ghosts and these cartels?
You know, that's true what you say.
Yeah.
But the young members of parliament talking about, most of them have also been captured by the legacy politicians. They are part of that system. There is no change in them. In fact, they are toddlers. They are children of the legacy politicians, politically speaking. That's the system that they reign into office. What I'm talking about is a complete, total wipeout. Fagia wote.
Drain the swamp, essentially.
Drain the swamp, yes. Fagia wote. These who've been part of this legacy politics, they must all go. Who said that teacher in Kakdinu primary school, who people in that community know his conduct and his consciousness about the common good, should not be elected as a member of parliament in Karachuan? Why must it just be the same old faces every day? So it's about draining the swamp. We are 50 million. I've told you they're less than 2,000. Legacy politicians, they're surrogates. They're less than 2,000. All they've mastered is the art of manipulation. They manipulate you to always just choose one of them. And the last example I always, my favorite, I normally give, in the last election, Raila and Ruto were presidential candidates. Martha and Gachagua were running mates. Kalonzo was previously running mate to Raila. Today, the presidential candidates on one side, the running mates on one side. And then you tell me that in between these two, you can achieve what we are talking about. You cannot. It is the same crop of leaders. So me, I'm simply saying it's about fagia water. Let all of them go. Let's now choose from within the rest of us, 50 million. Choose the best who represents this consciousness. And as Du says, it doesn't have to be written even anywhere. It is something that must be innate in you. That I'm here to serve. I'm not here to be rewarded.
Okay, even as we talk about draining the swamp and having a crop of new leaders and that it must be innate in us, we also need to go back and look at the system that makes all these things happen. So we talk about the IEBC, let's talk about the judiciary, let's talk about the security agencies in the country that then would all come together to ensure that this idea that you're talking about is realized. As you speak, it seems as though these systems are rigged or these systems are meant to work in a certain direction. So as we talk about making sure that these things do work, How do we get it if it's all messed up?
Didn't you see those systems collapse yesterday? Didn't they collapse on the 25th of June last year? They collapsed again yesterday. When people in their numbers claim their space, united in one accord to speak and to champion only one cause, it's over for them. No system can withstand that kind of human emotion and demands. They cannot. Those systems that we're talking about, as part of the consequences of draining the swamp, even them, we are going to uphold them, overhaul all of them. When police, my favorite submission to the people of Kenya is one thing. Why should we not have civilian police oversight at every police station? That we say, in every police station, there must be a local community oversight committee that has a right to enter into a police station, to inspect the OB book, to inspect the armory, confirm when policemen are given firearms, who was given what firearm, how many bullets, what was the return, if you used a bullet when you went out, how did you use it? Did you record the incident? Was anybody injured? Did anybody die as a result of the use of that firearm? Then they even have a right to inspect the police and say, why are these people being held here? Why have they not been taken to court? Why have they not been given cash bail? This is a bailable offense. This is so and so's son, we know him, he lives in our community. Release him in bail, even free bail, free bond. We know we'll make sure he comes to court. We'll bring him to court. The community civilians taking control of their policing. And even the OCPD in charge of every police division. Why should he be a policeman? Appointed by legacy politicians. That OCPD, in my view, should be elected by the people in that division. Because now he's responsible, he's answerable to the people on how policing is done in his division. So that if you have an unmarked vehicle of men wearing balaclavas and civilian clothing, shooting around at his citizens, they can go to him and ask him, what are you doing to us? Who are these men? Why have they not been apprehended? How are they operating within our police locality? That is what I say. It's about power in the hands of the people. So even these instruments of oppression, we must, in the fullness of time, hand them over to the people. As it is now, OCPD is here. If Ruto calls any of them, if the man was sitting, he will stand up and salute even on the phone. Why? Because he's beholden to a legacy politician.
I hear what, it's because then my mind starts to work around the processes for this thing to happen. And that if truly the change that Kenya is seeking needs to happen whereby the swamp is drained, right? Because then it's said so many times until it's almost become cliche that you can't keep doing the same things over and over again in the same manner and expect that you'll have a different outcome, except for where the recipe is clear. If you want to bake a cake, you put together eggs, flour, sugar, whatever. You put it in the oven, put it in for a period of time, you will get a cake. Except for when it's formulaic and it's dependent on that recipe, you get the thing. But aren't we kind of looking at the same thing here? If you have individuals then who make up units into communities, if they have this innate conscience working to ensure that they have good governance, you put it together, you put it in the oven, you bring out individuals who will then be able to govern properly. That's the kind of formula that we need here. But the question is, where and how do you now get people to start to coalesce around an idea? Not people, to coalesce around the idea that it is them, it is us, who are then going to be involved in a process that will bring out what we are looking for. It's not somebody else over there who's going to do it. It is not somebody from another country who will then come and tell you this is the way in which you should go. But it requires people to be involved. Are we at that place? Have we gotten to the point where people are going to say, well, we can't depend on anybody to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves?
I do believe
Are we there?
I do believe we are. That is why yesterday you witnessed a congregation of Kenyans in Nairobi, in numbers never seen in the history of the earth, united in one accord, not to champion a political cause, but to champion a people's agenda, that we want accountability and we want good governance. That's all they were asking. And not even mobilized by any legacy politician. Self-mobilized. When you see people in those numbers coming out on their own, you cannot even say that there was a Raila Odinga somewhere who was saying, Tunaenda maandamano. No. It was people consciously saying, we are going to do this. And the numbers you saw in the streets have never been seen in Nairobi in the history of the earth. What mobilized them? If not what I'm calling the self-consciousness of innately all those young people, and even the old who joined them, were not on the streets because they were being pushed by a political agenda. No. It was about a self-consciousness to demand for a better country, accountability and good governance. And they did it in numbers beyond what legacy politicians, even Raila Odinga in his best times, when he was the king of the streets, he never got those kind of numbers.
If you drain the swamp, Willis, because a lot of the things that we're talking about are systemic, aren't they? Look across board. When you want to talk about, what we see happening in the police, even with the reforms that took place and the report that we saw from Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga, that these things are systemic, that it's almost as though there's an unwritten rule, a chain of command that you must follow once you get into the system for which you will operate. When you get into certain ministries, there's a reason why, for example, the Ministry of Health is called Mafia House. It's a systemic way of doing things that for years people have known. It doesn't matter. Even if you come here tomorrow, Willis, this is the thing and that's how it's going to happen. It doesn't matter where you go. This kind of system we see of rot is so deeply embedded that I have to ask the question, and these are the things that then display in the frustration that people feel that take them to the streets. Because it's not working here, it's not working here, it's not working here. That idea of impunity is everywhere. So if we say we drain the swamp, does it then take away this systemized impunity that is currently the bane of the existence of Kenya today? Does it take that away?
It does. And let me put it this way. You must first understand what even makes those systems to thrive. Those systems thrive in the sense that the people have totally donated their sovereignty. Now they are going to run to the legacy politicians. In my proposal, I'm simply saying, when we are going to donate power to an elected group, we are going to make sure that there are so many levels of people participation, direct participation, in terms of constituting some of those boards. That's what I'm saying. Elections, for example, the police system that is captured. In fact, the police in Kenya today is a tool of legacy politicians used to oppress the people. That's its main objective. That's why you walk into a police station, the police sees you as an enemy. Unataka nini? Mbona ukuja jana? Toka, niko busy, rudi siku ingine. You are like an enemy. You understand? Now, we must break that system of police oppression. And how do we do it? I'm saying, let civilians elect their local committee from within their own community. So Dennis Okari, where he lives, he goes there and they have a meeting at their local police station as a community. They elect Dennis Okari and others to become a committee in charge of that police. They are the ones administratively in charge of the police station.
Like the American system where we have sheriffs.
The sheriff system, how it works. You are answerable to the people. The policemen will be hired the usual way, but in terms of administrative control and oversight, is in the hands of the local community. That is when now you enhance, you break those chains you're talking about. So that if tomorrow somebody goes to a police station and a police officer asks them, unataka nini? He knows, I have my local representative who oversights this policeman who is talking to me rudely. They are able to call him and ask him, why are you talking to our civilians like that?
Exactly.
That's not your duty. In fact, you're supposed to salute your civilian when you see him.
When you see him, because you're working for him, essentially.
To serve him.
I'd like us to interrogate this conversation just a little bit more, and that you're here, I think we'll take advantage of that. So stay on just a little bit longer, shall we, Willis? Let's take a break at this point, and then we'll come back and we'll continue. It's now 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. The conversation continues after this. And things like that. Are we saying that in the current dispensation, that all of those things don't matter if you don't have the right people who then are doing the job? Because this all then manifests itself in the cries that you hear, that if we had the right people in government, if we had the right people in leadership doing the right thing, we would not have mothers crying for the death of their sons. We would not have fathers pleading and begging, asking where their children are. We would not have people saying, I can't afford to send my children to school. We would not have people lining up at hospitals and saying, we cannot get the help that we need because we don't have enough money. Would we say that this change that people are asking for, and it just segue just a little bit because I saw 2 young women yesterday on in the middle of the street, and they said, you know what, we don't have. Took my mother to hospital. I don't have the money to treat her, and what they're asking for, I can't pay. That's why I'm in the street today. That's what I'm asking for. That's what I'm asking for. That's the help that I'm asking for. So are we saying that if you drain the swamp, Willis, as you had said before, and that you then put in the person who is leading by example in a school, or the person who is leading by example in their community, put that person in a position of leadership, will we start to see the diminishing of these issues?
You know, the most important thing that we must look out for is the intent. What is the underlying intent in every decision that is being made, in every action? What we have today in Kenya is a governance system whose intent is self-aggrandizement. That's the unspoken rule, the unspoken word. It's not about service. What I'm raising is that we need to have within leadership and public space people whose intent is informed by a desire for the common good. Because that now informs even that little decision that you're making. You know that whatever I'm doing, how does it contribute to the common good? Not how does it contribute to me aggrandizing wealth for myself. What we have is a system where people wake up in the morning and all they're thinking about is how can I accumulate, how can I cut corners to make a quick buck for myself, not to contribute to the common good. That is the major difference. So that as we drain the swamp, the drained swamp must be replaced by a national social consciousness that whatever you are going to do, you are doing it for the common good. What are the values that inform our existence, our interactions with the fellow citizens? If there is no value system, then forget about it. Today, we don't have any value system in this country. In fact, the value system is now emerging using the young people led demonstrations. That's why now we are talking about the values of human life, the values of humanity, so to speak. But previously, our values have been all about, I just need to get myself into public space, and I use it as an opportunity to accumulate for myself.
Let's talk about those legacy politicians for a minute and now go and think the future. Let's assume we're in agreement that we need to drain the swamp. How do we do that? It's through an election. Now, when you talk about an election here, there's a conversation when it should actually be held. 2027, you have the argument it should actually be before 2027, correct?
The Constitution, not me.
The Constitution says it should not be 2027. Well, when we talk about elections, we have the head of state, who's President William Ruto, saying, look, I'm not going to hand over power to people who are just screaming one term. They have no solutions to Kenyans. It doesn't work like that. You have his foot soldiers who have time and time again, in not so many words said, look, we can't just have a president sitting in 5 years and you think you can just eject him. We have tools and means to make sure that he actually goes beyond the 5 years, or even we change the constitution. We say, you know what, he's going to rule for another 20 years. Those undertones that he's not going to let go that easily. But constitutionally, we look at numbers. Do you think in 2027 or even before the elections, it will be easy constitutionally to get him out? Because the streets may not work for now, as we see. There are channels to get a president out legally. But when you talk about numbers, galvanizing around voting blocks, what do you see? What's your reading?
Let me start by saying this. I'm one person who believes in the act of the impossible. And I will never say that the streets cannot be away or removing. It is away, and it remains away. Time will tell. But let me say this. Number one, William Ruto does not need to hand over power. He can stay with it. In our constitution, in our laws, we don't have handing over power. We have assumption of office of the president-elect. He assumes office. This is not a monarchy. This is not William Ruto's kingdom, where he says, I'm handing over power to the next person. No, you don't hand over power. You can stay with it. What we have, this is a democracy, a republic. Once the people have donated their sovereign to the person they've elected, that person assumes office. So what we have is assumption of office, not handing over of power. But if in his mind, he thinks that it's him who will hand over power, I'm sorry. The next elected person will assume office as he's protesting, as he's shouting, as he's making all the manner of noises that he wants to make. It is right to make the noises. But the person will assume office as president. So we should not even pay attention to his talk about handing over power. There is no room for handing over power here. What we have is the person assuming office. Number two, I want to say this. Forget about William Ruto. Even if you look at the legacy politics, way of doing politics and elections, in terms of votes, that man needs 8 million votes. The person who will be elected president next in Kenya will need 8 million votes.
Assuming that, the number of people who registered to vote are certain, or people who actually voted.
We are talking of a register of 22 million votes, registered voters. And I'm being very conservative.
Yes.
And I'm saying, give or take, you have a voter turnout of 16 billion. Remember, the voter register is 22 million as today. I'm just saying it needs a minimum of 8 million. And I'm taking into account that maybe some people have died, some people are not going to turn out to vote, some people are offering essential services, they can't appear at the registration centers. So I've put them at around 6 million. So he needs, the person who's going to be elected will need a minimum 8 million votes. Tell me in this country, where will William Ruto get 8 million votes? And I want to tell you this. Moi, legacy politician, Moi used to win and be elected president by only 33% of the votes. Look at what Moi had. That time, the vote was based on simple majority. First past the post, you are elected president. Now that has moved. We now have 50% plus one. Okay? And Moi had the entire Kalenjin area. He had almost the entire coast, save for parts of Mombasa. He had the entire Ma community. He had the entire Kisii region. He had the entire Northeastern. He had the entire Ukambani. And all that was giving him 33%. What does William Ruto have if we're using the legacy politicians' lenses?
But Wakili, as well as Ruto himself has said, at saizi ni mambo ya kufanya kazi, I'm focused on working. Come election time, tukutane ground and nitawapiga straight. So as we sit here, there is now the question of...
That is what I call the confidence of a fool. Yes, as you sit here.
Yeah, as you sit now, there is voices that are coming across board. There are the young people who are calling for this new regime. And we also have the legacy politicians who are determined to say we are also here to stay. So then are we able to turn these voices, say the young vote, the youth vote, to finally get to register and even vote to assure the new dispensation?
As it is, in fact, sometimes when I hear people say that, the young people have not voted, they won't register as voters, now they will not turn out to vote. What the young people are championing, the cause they're championing, it's not like these young people, they come to the streets, they champion their cause, and they go back to heaven. They go back to the community, they live within us. They represent our common feelings. It is the feelings that permeates into every generation, even the old. It is not that the legacy politicians have a lock and barrel of voters who are not living in this economy, are not seeing what the young people are championing. They exist here. So the young people, what they've done is they've given a voice to the common feeling of all Kenyans. So don't expect that on election day, that the persons who will turn out to vote will have a different feelings from what our young people have been expressing. They will just now be going to actualize that feelings through a ballot. And that feeling, as I'm telling you, it's a feeling that we are birthing a new republic. It is about the Kenyan people finally finding their voices and demanding for a better country. Ole wao to the legacy politicians. Wajinga wamerevuka hapa Kenya. And kimachao ki motoni. And the people will be voting in one accord to send all of them home.
But you know they're saying, I have the Kalenjin vote and also Baba joined me. So
it's okay. It's okay. I've said it's okay. They can continue. I saw in Eldoret people were demonstrating yesterday. I saw in Kericho people were demonstrating yesterday. But legacy politicians will desire to take Kenyans down the tribal path. That let us caucus based on tribes. And you are seeing it a lot, especially from some wings in the ODM cycle, trying to push the tribal narrative that, oh, this is not our fight. These are fights to do of which region. No. This is a fight for the people of Kenya. Victor Tino Odhiambo, the young man who was shot yesterday, is a Luo. Victor Odhiambo was out on the streets, not as a Luo, but as a Kenyan, a young man agitating for good governance, for a country, an economy that makes meaning to him. Unfortunately, the police shot him in the head and he died. Then you have somebody trying to gaslight Jaluos that no, that is not our fight. We should keep off. We are now in government. What do you mean you're in government? You're in government, but last night in Sindo, there's a mother who is not able to access healthcare services. There's a school kid today in Sogomere who has not gone to school for lack of school fees. Today in the morning, you have a young boy in Nyawita who's been unemployed for the last 3 years. He is now reduced to doing menial jobs, and for the last 3 days he's not gotten a job. The menial jobs, even to feed himself. Last night he got a meal from his neighbor to survive. And you're telling them that now, don't demand for a country that works for you because you're in government, just because you have 2 CS slots. Legacy politicians are in government when we must tell them the truth. Those are legacy politicians who are in government. They should stop gaslighting the people of Kenya.
And Willis, that brings me back to my question: is that is there a connect? Is there a connect between what governance does and these examples that you give?
There is.
Do we really have an understanding that because of what somebody does or doesn't do, because of corruption, because of impunity, that is why the woman who seeks medical care then cannot get it because certain things have not been done? Because from where I sit, until and unless that there is a direct visible connection between how this governance works and what you see manifested, until you see that connect, that this is directly connected to the other, it will greatly affect the decision that you make when you go to the ballot. Or in this case, it will not.
You know what happens, and we thank God for mobile phones. Kenyans are now more analytical than they were 5 years ago. And in terms of access to information, Kenyans are now in the information age. You'll even think that somebody maybe deep in the village does not have access to information. They have. Just with a phone, that person is able to participate actively in what the young man in Nairobi is participating in, just on the click of a button. So there is a connect. And Kenyans are now being more aware. They are breaking down what is the cause of their problems. And they understand these governance challenges they are facing and the role of political leadership in making the situation worse or better for them. When you talk about that lady who's not gone to hospital last night from Sindo, she knows it's because of shift share. Why? She was told, you must pay yearly. Her assessed contribution was 1,030 per month. Now she's been told she must pay the whole amount, 10,000, almost 900, before she can be treated. This is a lady who does not have a job. She survives on subsistence farming. She's now sick. She can't even go to her own farm. And she knows who came up with the shift share. Legacy politicians. So she can connect. And so she's saying, these are the people who are causing me my economic pain. These are the people who are causing me my health to deteriorate. Whereas before, I had NHIF, I could pay 300 shillings and get some basic comfort. Now, you expect me to pay 10,000 shillings upfront to access healthcare services. I don't have it. What do I do?
How do we turn the conversation? With all carefulness here, how do we turn the conversation from plainly, the president must go, to a full direct understanding of him going and somebody else coming in, right, to lead, means that the people are directly involved in their own governance. That this person that you have lent your power to then be able to lead over time and to ensure that certain things work, that you're going to be vested every day. How do we turn it from this isn't working and this person must go to bringing in somebody new and now understanding fully that we're not just going to allow it to be business as usual, that you must actually be vested in an everyday kind of governance, essentially working out your governance with fear and trembling daily.
In problem solving, there are different phases. Phase one is identifying the problem. The phase we are in is phase one. The Kenyan people have identified the problem to be legacy politicians, at the moment led by William Ruto. So we've identified the problem. So you break down the math. The math is the problem. Now we'll start working on the solution. So phase two will be about the Kenyan people now interrogating that solution. What kind of leader do we want? Previously, Raila Odinga for the longest time has been what I can say the face of championing social change. A role that he has played over a long period of time. But today, he's not even seen as the one leading the conversation of the people of Kenya.
He's not.
The people are doing it on their own. And even the other politicians on that side, none of them is emerging as the rallying point for this conversation. So it tells you the minds of the people is still not yet in that phase of saying this is our leader. They are still doing the question of identifying the problem and assigning it a role and a face. And that face is William Ruto. So the problem must be removed. Then we'll go to the next point phase, which is the solution. The solution will be, we rejected the legacy politicians because of ABCD. The solution must aspire to the following. And the leader will emerge naturally. Because you've now known what the problem is, you know what you don't want, and you know what you want going forward. If it was that Kenyans are just doing it for Ruto must go, that's the only solution. By now, you will have seen carelessly anybody becoming the leader of the movement. Kenyans will have picked anything other than Ruto. But they have not. Everybody is still being looked at from a distance. So even the ones who try to propel themselves to lead, no one has accepted them.
So I guess what I'm looking for is what's to guarantee, not even from the point of leadership, that this new person from whoever it will be, I'm not even from that point of leadership, but what's to guarantee that the people of Kenya will now, with whoever comes in, will be vested in making sure that this governance is lived out day to day. And I'm giving the example of this country, small country in the northwestern part of Europe, Switzerland, whereby they live this out daily. You cannot build a road in a neighborhood in Switzerland without the people being involved. Because number one, their money is going to be spent. They understand to a T this thing of having delegated their power to somebody who sits in a position of representation. But just because we voted for you doesn't mean we're going to leave you to now start running the thing as though it was your own, shop. That they've understood. This thing that we're talking about is innate in the leadership, it's innate in the people, whereby there's going to be responsibility, there's going to be proper management, there's going to be accountability. It is something that we haven't practiced. And I don't know that if it is it's a traditional African thing whereby we say, okay, so there's a leader over there, and because they're a leader, whether it's by birth or whether it is by appointment, that they can continue doing their thing over there, and we reserve the right to complain when something hasn't gone right. Now, if we are saying that times are changing, that we've seen things in a manner in which we've never seen them before, what is to guarantee that this shift for leadership is also going to be a shift in the minds of people whereby you hold a leader responsible at whatever level from minute to minute? Do we have the bandwidth for that? Or are we still split between that and bread and butter issues?
Oh, well, I have faith that we have the bandwidth for that. And I say that because of this. We have rightfully identified the problem. We now know what the problem is. Trust the same people who, unmobilized, come out in their numbers to champion for a cause. When the time comes to identify that leader, who they desire, they will equally apply the same parameters that were used in removing this last one on how to choose the next one. And there will be eternal vigilance. The Kenyan people have tested power in their hands. They're not going back. In the run-up to yesterday, there were people who felt that maybe it will be a low turnout. People have lost interest. Many times people have been discussing pundits that are called on media saying how the Gen Z revolution, the spirit has died, it has waned. It has not. It is something that we tested power. The Kenyan people tested power, the power in their hands. It will never die. And going forward, the template will be, if the people just even smell a whiff that you are going outside the social contract, they'll be on your neck. And I assure you, no leader wants to see people on the streets agitating or baying for his blood. As a politician, you'll want to see people on the streets celebrating your successes, not demanding for your resignation. Don't think that William Ruto sits today, that he's happy at the police operation yesterday. He's not. Because he knows, as those guns were being shot, those tear gas guns were being shot, I'm sure somebody in Senator was telling him, and he was asking how far are the gunshots from the vicinity. Can you hear them? Before you know it, it's like, zinaongezeka, zimekaribia kidogo, ationgeza watu. He's a human being. He's not an immortal. He responds to our human emotions. So I'm sure if he had more and more gunshots or tear gas canisters flying, he was wondering that, are they anywhere closer to the State House? Are they coming for me? At the end of the day, you realize that even those guns can only protect you for this long. You are human and you want to be safe. So also that new person, he must.
You know what you've said is just an indicator that even the leadership that we have right now know exactly where we are and where the country is at, and that all there is trying to have a big chest and say, I can control this. But even while at it, one would ask, if the country is saying something, why not just fix it? Or is it just that the legacy politicians have no other way of playing good politics because they have a certain script?
You know, number one, for the legacy politicians, this is the hard work. They are used to the old easy work, the easy way out, which is I pit my tribe against another tribe. We do tribal arithmetic. That's the easy work. And the rewards are that the people are donating their sovereignty to me. I will run the nation without reference to them. Because the intent that informed my ascendance into office is not to serve, but to self-accumulate, to aggrandize for myself. That's the easy work. So now, you're telling them do the hard work. Have you seen today any minister, any CS wake up at 5 a.m. to go to Kenyatta Hospital to make sure that there's enough supplies for the patients in Kenyatta?
No, but we saw that.
But yesterday, we saw a CS wake up early in the morning to go to Parliament to inspect barbed wires. Why can't you see the CS of health wake up early in the morning today, 5 a.m., to go and check if Kenyatta National Hospital is working? If Bagadi District,
if they've replaced the radiology machine that is denying many people from...
That is the hard work, because that is done every day. They don't want to do the hard work. That man wants to be sleeping. Yesterday, the inspection at Parliament was just to try to scare Kenyans, a show of force, so you don't agitate for what is rightfully yours in the Constitution. But if it was about hard work, we will be seeing CSS waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning. One waking up at Kakamega or this referral hospital, checking on if Kenyans are getting quality care services. Another one will be waking up deep inside Lake Victoria to check to make sure that our fishermen are landing their fishes at the beach, and there's a refrigerator that they can store their fish, doesn't go bad, and they're getting good prices for their produce. Another one will be waking up early in the morning to make sure that the school kids going to school have teachers who are well remunerated waiting for them to receive them in school. You get? But that is the hard work. Because that is everyday work. That must be done every day to make it make sense. They don't want to do that.
Okay, let's, all these issues we're discussing, come the next election, get rid of the legacy politicians, drain the swamp, get new, fresh leaders. The issue that will still circle back to is the issue of economy. And there's so many economic pain points in this country. And the rallying call for yesterday's anniversary, if we go to last year, was skirting around the finance bill. These young people were looking at the economics of this country. And like you're saying, we can't afford meals. We can't afford to pay for hospitals. We can't afford fees. We don't have jobs. It still goes back to the issues of the economy. Now, I'm looking at the latest IMF debt, the most recent data, which is from May this year, just last month. And African countries with the highest debt to IMF, number 1 is Egypt, number 2 is Kenya. The next country, if we talk about the Eastern African region, Ethiopia is number 7. Tanzania is number 10. But Kenya is number 2 among the highest countries with debt to IMF. This is just IMF only. We're not talking about the other debts, consolidating all that. Now, if we talk about the issue of taking over now from this, when this government came into power, they said they inherited empty coffers. So the next government that will take over, if we have the next government taking over, will still go back to this issue of the economy. All these issues we're discussing here can't find solutions if we can't fix the economy. How do you suggest? How do you suggest we can go about it?
The problem of the country today, as a Safina Party, we are very clear. Our problem is debt. You are paying 70% of your revenue goes to debt finance. So out of every 100 Kenya shillings that the Kenyan people pay as tax, 70 shillings goes to debt finance. And our case is, you are not going to make progress without looking at this debt that you are paying for. Is it legal? Is it odious? And if it is illegal, why should we pay for it? That is what I say. These legacy politicians cannot open the debt books. Why? Because they know it. They borrowed money in the names of the people of Kenya. The money never landed in Kenya. What landed in Kenya is the obligation to pay. Now they have to keep back to the Kenyan people every year with the new finance bills to increase their taxes, charges, and levies, to charge them more, to pay for debts which never landed in Kenya, didn't finance any singular project. As we are very clear, you will not make any single progress as a country before you deal with the debt problem. And you deal with it this way. Open up that debt book register.
Let's know where we are.
Once you open that register, ask who gave out this money. Because we have been told we are 11 trillion in debt. Where is this project worth 11 trillion in Kenya today?
Yes.
So you gave us money. What were you financing? What project were you financing? None. We are not paying. You gave us money. Where is the parliamentary approval for this debt? Not there. We are not paying. That's an illegal debt. So you gave money to other people in the name of the people of Kenya. The Kenyan people cannot be the sovereign that banks that debt.
But Wakili, you can't say we can't pay this debt or for what you refer to as illegal debt. It's an obligation between government, not individuals.
Dennis,
so
let me explain.
Let me finish my question first. So this is an elected government. It's transacting business on behalf of the country, whether illegal or not. Now, in this case, we open the debt books and we say, and we audit, what did you do with this money? So if we find out of the 11 trillion, maybe 5 just got lost somewhere, you still have obligations to pay these debts
Dennis,
to these international lenders.
let me explain to you, Dennis.
Yes.
We are a republic. This is the Republic of Kenya, not the Kingdom of Kenya. A kingdom is run on the whims of the king. A republic, on the other hand, is run on the whims of its constitution and laws. Those laws equally bind the duty bearers, the people who are holding office. So if you are a president of a republic, you are bound by the constitution and the laws of that republic. And anybody interacting with you, dealing with you, locally or internationally, looks at you and knows you are a president, not a king. You are a president subject to the laws of your republic. So you've come to me to borrow money, right? I am aware that you have the authority to borrow money, but only if your laws give you the authority to borrow money. So they will have a duty to look into your laws. What does the law say about borrowing? What does the law say about debts and project finance and parliamentary approval? Once they ascertain that, okay, your laws say you can only borrow for development projects. Yes, so you want to borrow money to a development project, your laws allow it, take. Number 2, you must get parliamentary approval. Where is your parliamentary approval? You don't have it? I'm sorry. Go and get it, then come back to us. But you cannot say that because you are the president of the Kenya, you can just go out there and people just start giving you loans and they don't want to do diligence on your laws. Let me finish. Okay. They don't want to do diligence on your laws. Then next time you'll be telling me that the president can walk into a foreign country and hand over the title deed of Kenya, and they take it and say, he's the president who gave us. He can't,
but
because it's the laws.
Willis, are you saying IMF and other international lenders have conspired with these people within government to lend this money?
Yes. They have failed to do their due diligence. Previously in Kenya, in the old constitution, we didn't have a PFM provisions, public finance management provisions in the constitution. So the executive had a fiat, an open check on how to borrow and spend the money. But now, since 2010 constitution,
you have regulations.
We have regulations. You have the PFM Act. So IMF and the other international lenders had a duty to do their due diligence. Buyer beware. They have to do their due diligence and confirm before we advance any money to the Republic of Kenya. What does their laws say? And have their laws been complied with in regard to this proposed debt? And they need a duty to ask the government, go and comply with your laws before you can take or you can release this tranche to you.
Wakili, I hear you speak of the laws that guide how we borrow debt, and it's clear, rather it's coming out that there are some laws that were not respected by individuals who hold office.
Yes.
And as we talk about draining the swamp, there is the aspect of drain the swamp, but then again, let justice be served. So individuals who have borrowed, it's about time that they went to the courts.
No, this thing
not necessarily have borrowed. Are we saying because it's not just borrowed, but
the view that I hold, justice. No, it's justice. When you drain the swamp, you don't just drain the swamp and let them get scot-free. People must pay. I mean, you're talking of 11 trillion.
Nothing
and some of this money, just to tie it up for Dennis, I'll give you the best example, the easiest to understand, which was prosecuted in the public domain, was Eurobond 1. $2 billion US, taken from JP Morgan. $1 billion US can be traced, part of it, central bank exchequer account, part of it used to pay an old debt. 1 billion accounted for.
Dollars.
$1 billion US
yes.
accounted for. That's almost 130 billion Kenya shillings by today's exchange rate. Another $1 billion US, 130 billion US. When public pressure was put on Henry Rotich, he released redacted SWIFT transaction documents. Redacted. They are showing where the money is coming from, but the recipient is redacted. It ended up in a private account in Qatar. $1 billion US, 130 billion Kenya shillings. Are you telling me that the Kenyan people should pay for that 1 billion lying in somebody's private account in Qatar? No. That is an odious debt. It's illegal to the people of Kenya because even JP Morgan ought to have known when you are releasing this 1 billion Kenya US, did they have parliamentary approval? Number 2, was it going to finance a project? Which project was it that you're financing? Where are the project documents? You need to satisfy yourself. But you cannot just say that because it was the president or it was the CS Treasury or the accountant general who walked into your offices and says, here I am, my appointment letter. You just give them money and you expect the Kenyan people to go and underwrite that illegal debt. No. That debt cannot be paid by the people of Kenya. And it is those debts, this is just one of them. You go through the book, you'll find many of such debts that will give people, once you isolate the odious debts, the obligation to pay debt will give the Kenyan people a breather once it is stopped. Why? This financial year, this coming financial year, we are going to be paying 2.2 trillion Kenya shillings in debt finance. This year, our collections were around 2.3 trillion.
The entire amount is
The
going to
entire
carry
amount,
just debt
revenue,
only.
tax revenue, 2.3 trillion this year. Next year, based on the projections, we are paying 2.2 trillion debts. What are you telling me? The largest expenditure item of your books is debt finance. That is why the government has to come to you every day to increase your taxes, charges, and levies. Because they have no breather. All the collection they are making from the existing taxes, they're using it to pay debt. So if we declare this debt odious, then you have no appetite to increase taxes for the people of Kenya.
Who would do that? Because it's clear. I mean, Willis, you know, and I hear you, some of the things that we say that need to be done. But then who would do that? And then where would it sit? Because when we talk about odious debt, it is clear. We know what the law says, very clear. Because again, and somebody asked, how do we go then from talking about Mandamano and talking about bad governance, and then here we're talking about debt, and it's all in the same book. It is all related, right? That we see some of the behavior, and that is what essentially has led to some of the problems that we see today. That if for every 100 shillings that you had, if you were not spending 70 shillings of it paying debt, then you would have a little bit more wiggle room to deal with these issues that we are talking about that are putting people in the streets in the first place, right? So we can make that comparison. But now when we talk about odious debt, we know the tenets upon which Kenya can borrow. It is in the constitution. You can borrow for development, or you can borrow in the short term to fill a budget windfall.
Yes.
I mean a shortfall. You can do
liquidity
that.
issues.
And the cash flow period we're talking about is not more than 90 days, three months. We know this. So if Kenya borrowed $2 billion, and you know we say $2 billion like it's just two. No, actually, when you put it in Kenya shillings, it's 130. It's 260 billion dollars. I mean billion shillings. It's a lot of money. I dare say that if you put 200 billion shillings into the economy today, you would feel it. You would see it. We would be able to look back and see where 200 billion shillings had been spent. But there's a gaping hole next to that number because you cannot see what it was used for. So constitutionally, it is very clear that certain things can happen as a result of that. We know. The controller of budget will tell us that this didn't happen. The Auditor General will come and do the report after and tell us it's very clear that we see these gaping holes, it didn't happen. But then nobody really does anything about that, do they?
No.
Nobody really does anything about it. No. And so here we are saying that these money should be declared as odious debt and that Kenyans ought to refuse paying for it. But how, Willis?
You know, first and foremost, you ask who is the duty bearer. It's the legacy politicians today.
But they're there.
They're the ones paying it. So when we drain the swamp, the new duty bearers have a responsibility not to pay it.
Should they be jailed?
They should jail the ones who took these illegal debts. And even assets should be frozen and recovered. The banks that facilitated these things, they must explain to the people of Kenya what they are financing. Why did they send money to people's private accounts and expect the Kenyan people to underwrite them? No. We demand for accountability in a way that achieves what I call the common good. Without it, we are wasting time. And without looking at the debt book, we'll be demonstrating here every single day until Jesus comes back. What is strangling this nation economically is the illegal debts which have been taken by the Ruto regime, from Uru's time to now Ruto's time. Those illegal debts is what is sinking this nation. You are not able to pay it. Because of the huge debt payment programs, you are now starving funds of other essential services to the people of Kenya. You are not able to expand the economy. That is why the state of joblessness. That's why now you come with the shift share and you make it very onerous. You want the people to bear the burden of meeting their healthcare costs at a full cost, as if government is a businessman. Government is an essential service provider, not a businessman. That's why university funding model. You are transferring the burden of payment back to the parent. Government cannot subsidize university education. Why? Government's money is tied up in paying odious debt. So all these failures are as a result of the odious debt, the legal debts that were taken or that are still being taken.
Wakili, we had a rallying call a few years back. It was Kibaki Tosha. Then we moved to another political euphoria where it was hustlers versus dynasties.
Dynasties, yeah.
What do you see as the rallying call for this next election cycle? 1. 2, for the incoming government, assuming that we'll have a new government, what, in terms of an itemized list, should be the top 5 priorities, for example? Because we look at each incoming government, they will obviously set the agenda. They are going back and drawing the inspiration from their manifestos and their promises during the campaign trails. But we know right now those manifestos anyway mean nothing. But if you are to look at areas of priorities, top 5 for a new president that will be coming in, assuming there will be a new president. And I'm drawing this in comparison to what we saw in the US, for example, when Donald Trump took over power. He went into a frenzy with executive orders to undo a lot of the things that were in the previous administration. What, then, in your case, will you suggest to undo in this country?
The first top priority, in my view, number 1 should be accountability.
Accountability.
Accountability, number 1. You start from accountability. Why are we here? Policemen who've been killing Kenyans must be called to account. The commanders responsible for the units that have been killing Kenyans, maiming them, disappearing them, they must be in court. Because we must, off the table, you must set a template for the new administration. And a message must be sent.
This is not business as usual.
It's not business as usual. And even us, if that new team, even us, if we do it, our fate will be in those courts. So the first thing is accountability. Let the policemen be in court. And the commanders be in court. Faced with criminal charges. And let every policeman know that even if this new administration sends you to go and commit the ills your predecessors committed against the people of Kenya, you will also end up in that courtroom. Accountability. Number 2 is compensation. The fight that we've had here has been a very painful one. Kenyans have lost their lives. When I talk of compensation, in fact, I should call it with the wider reparations. Those who've suffered in this struggle must get reparations. And reparations is the whole rubric. Compensation, social cycle support, recognition, remembrance, all of them. Then, once you've laid the basis, now go to the next thing. It's the economy. It's the economy, stupid. Now we are moving forward. As James Carville used to put it. It's the economy. How do we revive this economy? And number 1, on dealing with the economy, is the debt question. You are not going to make any measures on the economy without attending to the debt monster. At first instance, you must relieve the Kenyan the burden of paying 70 shillings out of every 100 towards debt finance. Once you give him that relief, these 70 shillings that you've saved out of every 100 from not paying for the odious debt, you are going to apply to other social programs. You are able to fully fund your education from primary to university. Yeah, you have 2.2 trillion that you're going to pay towards debt. You will need around 400 billion to fund free primary education from primary to all the way to university. For all Kenyans, plus even colleges. You are able to fully fund your healthcare system. You are able to get out. You're not borrowing the domestic market. You're able to to release that money to the Kenyan people to borrow. Kenyans have ideas. What they lack is access to capital. We put a freeze on domestic borrowing.
Yes.
The banks have the money. They are looking for profits. Interest rates today are 20%, 18%. With the government working out of domestic borrowing, interest rates will fall here to 3%, 4%. With the idea that Kenyans have an access to capital, what can they do? Then you look at people empowerment. You must give people power. All these things about giving the voice of the people the prime place that it deserves. What are the measures you're going to take to ensure that you empower the people? Not just economically, socially, and politically, but also in terms of their own governance. You must bring people's voices in everyday governance issues. I believe that we should be having referendums here every week on any issue.
There'll be a cost to it, though.
No. We have modern technology. We have modern technology. These things can be done at a minimum cost. Minimal. M-Pesa here, how many people transfer to M-Pesa? And it's running here on our phones.
Plus the fact that if you have people, and maybe if we're saying that we have people who are, again, that consciousness is front and center in the minds of people, the cost issue doesn't become one. It doesn't become an issue.
Yes.
Because here you are saying that everything that we do is collective towards the point whereby we are getting better. There's somewhere that we are going. There's a common good that we are trying to achieve. Then it makes sense.
Yeah, it will be worth it. Otherwise, because the same money that you're saying you're going to save is being stolen by legacy politicians today. Those are the savings you'll be having. They're now used for people's empowerment and amplifying the voice of the people in their governance.
And you see, all that we're talking about in here are things that are achievable. Any leader would just sit and say, this is what my people want, and I will ensure that this is achievable. But that's not the case.
No, because they're legacy politicians, and that requires hard work. It's hard work.
It's hard work.
Okay.
It requires some elbow grease and some thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. What's your fifth one?
The fifth one for me was you have to take back agriculture. You must take people back to agriculture. And not agriculture of hoes and jembes, of value addition. We must accept, as a country, we may have leaped at some point in terms of our agricultural engagement. What's the value add? Are you going to produce just to eat, or you're going to produce as a raw material? Value addition. Those are the key things that, for me, I will pay attention.
When you're talking about people empowerment, what I didn't hear you talk about, which is a very big concern currently, is empowering institutions. So we have a current conversation around, for example, IPOA and its independence. So assuming that you've moved from accountability, which was justice, compensation still under justice, then we move to economy. When now you have institutions that are independent, empowered, how do you seal the loopholes that we see? Because when we come into the budgets, there's always the question of underfunding and weakening these independent institutions. And we have so many. And like we say, the law is very clear, the constitution is clear. We've got good documents in this country, but we don't actually see the results that they produce.
You know, when I talk of people empowerment, I actually have in mind that even those institutions, are they working to serve the people of Kenya?
They should be.
Let me ask you today, whose interests are they serving? Look at our Supreme Court, for example. Is it serving the people of Kenya? If you look at it, when I'm talking about bringing people into the public discourse to be involved, I believe even in our Supreme Court should not just be those 7 judges. We should be having a jury of eminent scholars sitting there. Yeah. On the question of facts, it is eminent scholars nominated by identified groups to give a verdict on the questions of facts. Then the judges can only speak on the law. Because we have a Supreme Court that seems to be doing things their own way. And who say they want to know the law better than everybody else? They know laws and facts, even what they don't know. I'm talking about these institutions. We are going to bring people in them to oversight them. Police stations. Who say that policeman is the one who knows about policing better than the community where security is being enhanced? The community must be in every police station as a local committee elected by the people to oversight that police station. The OCPD, in whose region wooded goons are deployed to kill these civilians, must be elected by the people in that locality. So, Dennis, for me, when I'm talking about people empowerment, I don't even want to look at institutions as they exist today. Because we know what those institutions have done to the people of
There's
Kenya.
got to
Look
be an
at IPOA.
overhaul.
Yeah. So the only way to bring people, to bring and strengthen those institutions is to bring people oversight. And I am very clear, for example, Supreme Court of Kenya. What is special about those 7 people? That they think they know better than all of us. We must have a juror sitting with the Supreme Court, questioning on the questions of facts. We have eminent scholars nominated by identified people bodies. We can say LSK, ISPAC, can say engineers, whatever it is, to address and to give the verdict on the questions of fact. Then the judges can only speak on the questions of law. Applying the facts which are agreed on. Otherwise, we are held hostage here by 7 judges who think they're demigods. They're not.
It's got to be a people-centric power to the people, and it's got to be a people-centric governance, and these are the conversations that we have to make these things known. Willis, we want to thank you for giving us your time this morning and for championing this conversation. It's necessary that we do. I keep saying we don't leave it and end it here because it must continue. But thank you for being part of keeping it going, and it's let's see, but we must all be involved in it. Asante sana. Advocate of the High Court, Wakili Willis Otieno has been our guest this hour. Good morning at 9:02.